Internal Revenue Service IRS tax news. Federal benefit recipients with children have more time to get the $500 economic impact payment. COVID tax tip 2020-113, September 2nd, 2020. The IRS has reopened the registration period for individuals who receive Social Security, Supplemental Security Income, Railroad Retirement, or Veterans benefits, but didn't receive $500 per child earlier this year when they received their economic impact payment. So let's just recap this problem so we can understand what is going on here. Note that the economic impact payments went out this year. They're actually going to be tied to the 2020 tax return, so they may be something that's going to affect your 2020 tax return, which you'll file in 2021. However, when they sent it out, they wanted to send it out as quick as possible, and therefore they based it on prior tax returns, 2019 if filed, 2018 if not filed. However, certain individuals aren't required to file a tax return. And if you haven't filed a tax return, or you're not required to, and generally this is for the people that are not required to file a tax return, the IRS still tried to give out the economic impact payment even though they didn't have the tax return, by basing it on other kind of federal taxes or benefit programs that people might be in. So for people, for example, that did not file a tax return, if they're receiving Social Security, Supplemental Security Income, Railroad Retirement, or Veterans benefits, then the IRS knows of them, and they have the required information as an individual to give them the payment. So you should have received the economic impact payment, about $1,200, I believe. But if you had a qualifying child, they would not have known about it unless you told them, because they're not basing it on a tax return. They're basing it on just basically payments, benefit payments that are going out. They then put in a tool to allow people to give the added information, even if they're not filing a tax return, to tell them about the qualifying child, if there is one, so that they can then give the $500 before they actually send out the economic impact payment. The original plan was tell us now, and we're going to give the deadline. We're going to give you the deadline at the point in time that we're basically going to be processing the payments, so that when we can give you the full payment, which will add the $500 to it. If you missed that deadline, you're still going to get the payment of the $1,200 most likely for an individual, but not have the other $500 for the qualifying child. And you can fix it when you do the tax return, because this thing is really tied to the 2020 tax return. So that's what the original plan was. But then, of course, that time passed, and we didn't have, a lot of people still didn't fill out, weren't able to get to, or whatever, didn't have the information to fill out the information for the other 500. So they are extending basically the time period so that you can, if you fall into this group, possibly get the $500 before the point in time that you would have to file the tax return in 2021 for the year 2020 in order to get it. And that's good because, one, they want to get the payment out sooner, and two, a lot of these people may not be needing to file a tax return at all. They would have to file it simply for this $500 repayments. So it'd be nice if there was an easier process than filing, the tax return. So in any case, back to the text. Federal benefit recipients can use the non-filer interpayment info here. There's a link to that tool. Here, there'll be a link to this in the description, to get a catch-up payment for a qualifying child if they have not done one of the following. Already used the non-filer tool to provide information about their qualifying child. So if you've already used the tool, then you should be okay there. Then they should be processing the payment. You want to just check on the payment, and you shouldn't need to use the tool again. Filed their 2019 or 2018 tax return. Notice this is only for people who didn't file their 2019 and 18 tax return, and generally for people that aren't required to file 2019 or 18 tax returns. So in other words, if you didn't file the 2019 or 18 tax return because you just didn't do it and you're supposed to, as opposed to your income, your taxable income is under the threshold at which point you would need to, then you should actually file the 2019 and 2018 tax return if you're required to do so. If you didn't file because you get payments from some other source that's not taxable, and your taxable income is lower than the threshold that is necessary to file, then that would be, typically this might be qualifying for you then. That might be the category we're looking at. So the non-filer tool is available on the IRS.gov in both English and Spanish. Eligible individuals can use the tool until Wednesday, September 30th. So Wednesday, September 30th, that's the new deadline. It's going to be, that's it. We're not pushing it out this time. This is like for reals. Wednesday, September 30th, to enter information about their qualifying children to receive a catch-up $500 payment per child. This payment will be issued in October. Those unable to access the non-filer tool may file a simplified paper return following the instructions in the frequently asked questions, the FAQs, on IRS.gov, IRS.gov. Anyone who misses the September 30th deadline will need to wait until next year and claim the payment as a credit on their 2020 federal income tax return. So that was the general rule. They tried to get this thing out before, and so that before they sent out the payment, so they can make sure they sent out the correct payment, not have this two-payment thing happen. But now they're going to send out this two-payment thing. So if you already got the $1,000, the actual economic impact payment, you might be able to get an added $500 for the qualifying child if you file before this new deadline, September 30th. And then if you miss it by that deadline, but you still should get another $500 for the qualifying child, then you could still pick it up by filing the tax return possibly in 2021 for the year 2020, because that's when this actual economic impact payment credit allowance here should be tied to on that actual tax return. So here we go back. Those who receive their original economic impact payment by direct deposit will also have any catch-up payment direct deposit to the same account. So obviously the new $500 would be going to the same account. Others will receive a check. Federal benefit recipients who use the non-filer tool after May 5th don't need to take any further action. Social Security, SSI, Department of Veteran Affairs, and Railroad Retirement Board beneficiaries who have already used the non-filer tool to provide information on children don't need to take any further action. The IRS will automatically send a payment in October. Get a payment status on IRS.gov. Eligible recipients who check the status of their catch-up payments using Get My Payment tool. So you can check on the status of the payment using the Get My Payment tool. There's a link to that here. Obviously, it's on the IRS website. They will also receive another notice, 1444, so you're going to get a notice with this as well, kind of giving you the explanation of it in the mail, stating after the payment is issued that should be kept with their tax records. Now note this again is going to be tied to your 2020 tax return that you would file in 2021 if you need to file, and therefore if you need to file, you want to keep that information with your tax record so that you can have it ready when doing the taxes.